Hi, my name is Scott Kissaw. I'm a professor of foreign language education and department chair at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte.
And I'm Mary Jo Adams, a French and Spanish lower school teacher and department chair at Providence Day School.
Mary Jo and I, along with another colleague at UNC Charlotte, Bob Algazine, recently completed a research project that we'd like to share with you. The project is entitled Middle School Foreign Language Instruction, a Missed Opportunity. K-12 students in American schools often have the option to begin foreign language study in middle school. Unfortunately, the number of middle schools offering foreign language instruction has been decreasing. As you'll see in this slide, while 75% of middle schools offered foreign language instruction in 1997, only 58% did so in 2008. There are things to consider when delaying the onset of foreign language instruction until high school. For example, research has shown that young children tend to have more positive attitudes toward language learning than teenagers. Further, teenagers tend to be egocentric, so they are concerned with how others view them and might be more anxious and self-conscious than younger children, and less likely to take risks with the language. There are also cognitive factors to consider. Young children tend to be more tolerant of the ambiguity often associated with learning a new language. People who are less tolerant get frustrated and may give up. Adults, on the other hand, are better able to handle explicit grammar instruction than are young children. With all of these things to consider, the question that arises is might American students who begin foreign language instruction in middle school be more motivated and experience greater gains in proficiency than their peers who wait until high school to start their studies? Over the past 40 years, a lot of research has looked at issues relating to age and language learning. Several studies have shown there to be advantages to starting language instruction early. Other studies, however, found there to be no benefits. In addition to reporting inconsistent results, these studies have often been conducted overseas, have involved immigrant children learning a second language, and made comparisons between groups of learners with vastly different degrees of prior language exposure. Their results, therefore, may not be applicable to the K-12 foreign language teaching context. There is a need for studies that focus on foreign language instruction in the United States involving students with similar prior language learning experiences. So, in this pursuit, we sought to compare the oral proficiency and language learning motivation of two groups of language learners in the same Level 2 language classes. One group began their studies in middle school, and the other group waited until high school to start. So now we'll move on to explain how we conducted the research.
So we used a mixed methodology. In other words, we collected both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data were collected via student surveys and scores on an oral proficiency assessment, and qualitative data came from student interviews. So you'll see from this slide, 117 students in a Level 2 foreign language class participated in the study. The majority of the students studied Spanish, and others studied French, Mandarin, or German. Just over 60% began their foreign language studies in middle school, and 39% waited until high school to start. 8 of the 117 students also participated in a follow-up interview. And these 8 students represented all 4 languages, and half of those students began language study in middle school and half in high school. The students completed the interpersonal listening and speaking component of ACTFL's Assessment of Performance Toward Proficiency in Languages, the APPLE test, which is an online performance-based test. Students also completed an online survey to measure their motivation to learn languages. This survey, the Attitude Motivation Test Battery, consists of 3 main components: motivation, reasons for language learning, and attitudes toward the learning situation. The first component, motivation, is measured by one's desire, motivational intensity or effort, and one's attitude toward the language. The second component relates to the reason for language study. Some students are interested in getting to know and speak with people in the foreign language community, whereas others are more interested in the practical, career-related reasons for language learning. The third component, attitudes toward the learning situation, is measured by anxiety in the classroom and evaluations of the course and teacher. We also added a fourth component to our model, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, or confidence, has been found to influence one's language learning motivation. So once we collected all the data, we compared the total motivation and oral proficiency scores of the two groups of students, the middle and the high school starters. The interview transcripts were also analyzed, looking for themes that might help to explain the results.
So let's move on to the results. The data showed that the students who began foreign language learning in middle school obtained significantly higher mean scores on the APPLE than did their counterparts who started in high school. While approximately half of the 71 middle school starters scored intermediate low or higher on the APPLE, only 26% of the 46 high school starters had similarly high scores. Looking at the highest performing students, 18 of the 71 middle school starters, or 25%, received a score of intermediate mid, whereas only 2 of the high school starters were able to attain such a high score. While the interview data did not provide much additional information to support that early starters were more proficient than late starters, data from the late starters did suggest that they felt as though they had missed out on an opportunity to have improved their skills by not starting foreign language studies in middle school. Although no differences were reported in regard to the total motivation among the two groups, differences were noted in regard to 6 of the 9 components that make up the total score. 5 of these 6 differences favored the middle school starters. So this is the interesting part. The early starters were found to have greater motivational intensity. In other words, they reported that they put forth more effort than the high school starters. During the interviews, both groups reported to work hard, but the early starters were found to have more internal sources of motivation. For example, they reported to be interested in the language and the people who spoke it, whereas the high school starters reported to be motivated by external sources, like getting rewards for good grades and great teachers. The early starters also reported to be more interested in language learning for language and cultural reasons, as well as practical, career-related reasons, more so than their peers who started in high school, who were primarily interested in the study abroad opportunities offered with language learning. The survey results also indicated that early starters were more confident and less anxious than their peers who started in high school. These findings were supported in the interviews. The early starters were particularly confident in their oral communication skills. In contrast, the late starters were more anxious to speak in the foreign language. While the high school starters reported more positive evaluations of their teachers, the early starters had more positive attitudes about the course. Interviews supported the attitudinal benefits of starting foreign language instruction early. Several early starters mentioned that their middle school foreign language classes were fun and got them hooked on language studies. In contrast, the late starters mentioned the more academic nature of high school and that they felt isolated from their peers who started their foreign language studies in middle school and who are now in more advanced classes.
We feel that the study offers some unique and important contributions to the related research. Of course, the most significant finding is that early language instruction may lead to greater oral proficiency and higher motivation. The early starters reported to develop positive attitudes toward the language in their fun and engaging middle school foreign language classes that they carried forward to high school. We hope that this study helps to galvanize support for the expansion of early start foreign language programs and for making foreign language instruction mandatory in middle schools. We also feel the study could help inform all foreign language teachers regardless of setting. It should be noted that the early start students spoke often of the fun and engaging nature of their middle school foreign language classes. In contrast, the word fun was never mentioned by the high school starters. To develop positive attitudes among their students and an internal desire to pursue foreign language studies, all foreign language teachers, whether in a middle or high school setting, should infuse engaging teaching strategies and curriculum in their instruction.
My co-authors and I hope that this brief video summary has raised your interest in this topic and that you will explore the study in more detail by reading the full article in Foreign Language Annals this summer. Thank you.
Thank you.